Guys, what's going on? I hope you guys are well. I hope you guys are staying safe. I hope everything's good wherever you are. So guys, Gennady Golovkin. Before we get into this video, smash the like button, guys. Hit the subscribe button, share the video. I'd really appreciate it. Let's try getting this video to, 100 likes. But yeah, let's get straight into this. Gennady Golovkin has come out and said that he feels that Canelo Alvarez is not the best fighter in the world. And he goes, if you base it off the fights that I had with him, I don't believe he's the best fighter in the world. There obviously still seems to be a bit of resentment there from Gennady Golovkin. I think Golovkin looks at Canelo and thinks that, you know what, I think he feels a bit bitter in the sense that he probably feels that, he beat Canelo and he didn't get the credit for those fights with him. He's underappreciated. And when history looks back at Golovkin, they may not be so kind to him. And I think it is unfair on Golovkin because I personally had Golovkin winning the first fight against Canelo. I thought Canelo won the second one, but there was a lot of people that thought, Teddy Atlas actually had Golovkin winning both. And there was many others that actually had Golovkin winning both. But the second fight was a lot closer. I've got to be honest. The second fight was a lot closer. Canelo actually backed Golovkin up. However, I think the first fight was close, but I thought Golovkin was definitely a winner in that fight. So I do feel bad for Golovkin because Golovkin definitely probably deserved to win one of those fights. And unfortunately, he didn't get the decision. I think it was scarred with controversy because, Golovkin in the first fight, there was one judge that gave Canelo, I think, 118, 110, which obviously was ridiculous. But it was a close fight both times round. And Golovkin pushed Canelo like no other fighter. After Mayweather, you have to say that Golovkin, was like, I thought Lara was a close fight, but personally I had Canelo winning that fight. But the Golovkin fight, I thought Golovkin won that clearly in the first time round, and I thought Golovkin was hard done by. He was definitely hard done by, by the judges. But Golovkin, to me, and his career has been a bit of a, I think he should have achieved a lot more than what he did. And I think Rare Breed mentioned this, that, Golovkin's career has been a bit disappointing. When you look back at his career, a lot of his career was spent fighting guys that weren't the top tier guys. And to be honest with you, nobody really wanted to fight him. Everybody seemed like they were ducking him. Everybody seemed like they didn't want to go near him because he was too dangerous. He was knocking everybody out. And people knew, listen, Golovkin was the real deal. People knew about his amateur background. Canelo knew about Golovkin as well because Canelo had sparred with him. It's not like that Canelo didn't know about Gennady Golovkin. Canelo knew about Golovkin for a very long time. And he even knew about Canelo when Golovkin was like, when Golovkin was, on the rise. Canelo was a young guy and they sparred each other. So Canelo had already known a lot about Golovkin, and Canelo's team knew that this guy was the real deal and he was dangerous. Hence why they were probably reluctant at the time, because they probably thought Golovkin's older, Canelo's younger. We need to wait for when the time's right. However, Golovkin, for me, never took much risk. And what I mean by that, there was an opportunity for Golovkin to go up and fight Andre Ward, and Golovkin didn't do that. Golovkin kind of stayed in his comfort zone and stayed in the 160-pound division, when really, if we're honest, Golovkin could have easily gone up weight classes and gone up to light heavyweight, even, gone up to, super middleweight. Now, there was rumors that, Golovkin hurt Kovalev in sparring, and he put Kovalev down in sparring. But unfortunately, Golovkin just stayed put in one division. I don't understand it, because I personally think Golovkin could have moved up and he could have beaten a lot of guys. And I even think the Ward fight would have been a lot closer than what people thought. Golovkin was a really, really good fighter. Really, really good fighter. And Golovkin was a pressure fighter. That would have been a very, very hard fight for Ward. When you think about it, stylistically, Golovkin's a hard fight for everybody. Because Golovkin is a very, very strong guy. He's got a great chin. He's got a great punching power. His punches, like you get guys like pressure fighters like Maidana, who are a little bit wild. They have, Golovkin had great technical ability as well. The way he threw his punches, he was very correct, very technical. he was just a brilliant fighter. I think people underappreciate Golovkin's skills. Golovkin was an all-round great fighter. He had great boxing skills. You know, people say, oh, he's slow. No, his feet were brilliant as well. His feet were brilliant. He used to cut off the ring so well and close the gaps. He didn't let you exit. He didn't give you any exits. He cut off the ring. His punches were very correct. The only thing that you could say about Golovkin that, a flaw in Golovkin was the fact that he never had any head movement and, you know, he took a lot of punishment, but his chin was so good. So good. This man's never been down in all his amateur careers, pro careers. He's never been down. He's never been a fighter with a great defense. He always takes a lot of punches. Golovkin's a great fighter, man. Great fighter. And he pushed Canelo like no other one. No one else was able to do. Obviously, Floyd fought him, but, you know, Golovkin fought a more prime Canelo. And yeah, man, Golovkin's a great fighter. Now, it's upsetting that, you know, history won't look back on Golovkin. But in terms of him saying that Canelo's not the best fighter in the world, I disagree. I don't think there's anybody in boxing right now that you can say has a resume and has a career like Canelo. I don't think you can look at anyone in boxing right now that's doing what Canelo's doing. I know people want to say he's ducking this, that, and the other, but he's not. He's doing more than anyone else. And you've got to give him credit. I think obviously Golovkin's bitter because, like I said, when you feel you won fights and you didn't get the decision and you know how close those fights were, it's hard for you to say, I don't think he's the best fighter in the world because when he fought me, I don't think he beat me, you know. But what Canelo Alvarez has done since the Golovkin fights and what Golovkin has done since the Canelo fights, you know, speak volumes in the sense that, you know, Golovkin for me could have easily gone up to 168 and been the man. And what I mean by that is, Golovkin, although we didn't have the financial power of Canelo, we didn't have the, you know, commercial power that Canelo has, Golovkin still was a much bigger name than anybody at 168, and he could have done what Canelo did. Golovkin would have beaten everyone, bar Andre Ward, which would have been a very hard fight for him. He would have beaten everyone at 168. I'm confident of that. I think he would have beaten Froch. He would have beaten everybody, you know, Kessler. He would have beaten all those guys, in my opinion. So why Golovkin didn't move up to 168, even when like Badu Jack and James DeGale and all those guys were there, I believe Golovkin would have beaten all of those guys. Hence, I didn't understand why Golovkin didn't make that move. I even think a fight with him and Kovalev would have been great because Golovkin had a great chin. The only problem is I think Canelo is a lot more skilled all round. And what I mean by that is Canelo's also got a very good defense. Unfortunately, Golovkin probably didn't have the greatest defense, and he probably thought moving up weight classes, those guys hit him, going to hit harder, they're bigger, they're stronger. Could they hurt me? I don't think so. I think Golovkin could have hurt them as well. But, you know, especially at 168, I don't think there was anyone that Golovkin couldn't have handled. You know, Kovalev may have been, would have been difficult because Kovalev was in around his prime at that time. But I still think Kovalev and Golovkin would have been a great fight. Great fight because Golovkin had such a good chin. And he had great punching power. And like I said, great technical ability. That would have been a problem for anybody. I just don't know why Golovkin didn't take more risks. Because I think he, you know, could have done a lot more. But, you know, he decided to stay in the 160-pound division. And unfortunately, the talent there wasn't the talent in the middleweight division, which has always been a great division. There wasn't really any talent there in the middleweight division. There wasn't, apart from the Canelo fight, Jacobs was a good fight. But apart from that, there wasn't really anybody there for Golovkin to fight at middleweight. And that was the problem. There wasn't anybody to fight. Golovkin didn't really have many people to fight. And I think that was what it came down to. Golovkin didn't have the opponent. So what Golovkin had to do, he had to look up. He should have gone up. Because there were fighters there that would have enhanced his legacy that he could have beaten. Like I said, the Andre Ward fight, I know a lot of people would say Ward would beat him. I actually think that would have been a great fight. I actually think he could have given Ward a lot of trouble because stylistically, Golovkin's a problem. You know, Kovalev is a different fighter to Golovkin. Kovalev's not a pressure fighter. He's a boxer. Golovkin's a pressure fighter and he's a very technical pressure fighter. And he punches very hard. He's technically very sound. The way he throws his punches, he's not wild. And he cuts off all the exits. And Andre Ward wasn't a big puncher. He was a respectable puncher, but not a big puncher. You know, so I actually think that would have been a very, very good fight. And I think Golovkin would have done a lot better than what people would have thought. Golovkin could have won that fight. But unfortunately, their team wasn't willing to take the risk. I don't quite understand it because, like I said, I think he could have done a lot better than what people thought in that fight. But, you know, like I said, history may not look that kind to Golovkin. But I think Golovkin, there's no doubt for me, in his prime was an unbelievable talent. Unbelievable talent. A great fighter. And actually a great fighter that probably should have gone on to achieve more. Now, yes, there was also people ducking him, but there was also opportunities for him to move up. The fact that I think that the problem is with Golovkin, I think he was too fixated on that Canelo Alvarez fight that he forgot that there was other great fighters and there was other great ways of him creating a legacy. I understand that the Canelo Alvarez fight was a huge payday and he got that twice against Canelo. So, financially that was very lucrative for him. And the fights in the higher weight classes with Ward and Kovalev may have not been. But a Golovkin-Froch fight would have been a great fight here in the UK. And Golovkin could have easily come back down and fought Canelo. Or Canelo eventually moved up. So Golovkin could have seen him at 168. But yeah, I feel for Golovkin because Golovkin was a great fighter, great fighter. And there's always going to be that rivalry there with Canelo. There's always going to be that rivalry there. And, maybe you could say Canelo owes him that third fight because the first two fights were so close and maybe Golovkin won that first fight against Canelo. So maybe, you could look at it 1-1 and maybe the winner, this one, I would love to see Golovkin-Canelo 3. And Golovkin and Canelo will always be a great fight because styles make fights. And stylistically, that will always be a great fight. It'll always be a great fight. So, let's see if that fight happens. I'm not sure whether Canelo's that interested because Canelo probably thinks, what does that do for my legacy now? There's other fights, there's other options out there. Hopefully if Andrade and Charlo fight each other, Golovkin gets an opportunity to become undisputed. I don't know. Let's see what happens, man. But Golovkin always had a goal to become undisputed. And unfortunately, now he's got older. Probably that fire that's not there anymore for Golovkin. Golovkin just probably wants to have some big fights and then, see off into the sunset kind of thing. But great fighter. What do you guys make of his comments about Canelo? Leave your thoughts. Let me know what you think, guys. And guys, remember to please like, share, subscribe to my channel. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.